Hi, Kiko.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Hey, well, congratulations on the film. I'm talking to you from San Antonio, Texas. I know you grew up in Dallas, of course. Texas, I think, especially South Texas, has such a rich tradition of folklore and regional legends around, witches and mysticism. Did any of the cultural backdrops of Texas influence how you approached witchcraft in this film?
I think that, I love that you speak to ritual because I think it was more about sort of ritual and tradition. I felt that very much sort of growing up as a woman in Dallas, that there were sort of rules that we sort of made that derived probably from, fairy tales and folklore and these things that we grew up sort of watching and absorbing in and around Texas. And I think that when I was talking to Lily Houghton, who the play, she wrote the play and it was set in New York, and I said, there's something really interesting about Dallas and about Texas. There
Mhm.
is this feeling where I thought I could motivate the ritualistic sort of witchcraft behavior because I grew up with groups of friends that were women. We did seances together in sixth grade. We always were going to the haunted graveyard off the lake. There was a sort of spiritual, ritualistic feeling that I always felt growing up, and I felt like I could motivate. And I hope that, anyone that's from Texas that sees the movie sees a little bit of themselves in the sort of coven moments, in the moments of
Mhm.
paradise. Because I think, not every place puts such a weight on kind of group dynamics and tradition like Texas does.
Yeah, definitely. Well, here in San Antonio, we have like I was talking about our own religious stories. I mean, not religious, regional stories,
Hmm.
ghost stories. We have like the haunted ghost tracks. We have like something called the Donkey Lady. Were there anything specific to Dallas that you remember believing or thinking about growing up?
Yeah, there's definitely like the woman in white on White Rock Lake. There was
Mm.
some, a woman in a white dress, which like weirdly seems to be a common theme in haunted places and particularly water. And there was a graveyard, Fisher Cemetery, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, that was right off the lake that me and my friends would go hang out in. And, also I just find that the things that are haunted and witchcraft has always inspired me as a filmmaker. Like I was making movies since I was like 9 with my friends, and we would take our cameras and go to the graveyard and film a part of one of the movies I was making. But I think it's also now that I've been out of Texas for 14 years, I sort of had a bird's eye view on this sort of, again, that ritualistic spiritual side to things. I'm almost like haunted by experiences that I had
Mm.
that then as a writer, I'm able to sort of process through making something.
Right. As I was watching the film, I was wondering if you were going to specifically show where it was set. And then I saw the Texas license plate, and then other things started happening a little bit during the film. So, why did you ultimately land in Texas? And is this like the Galleria Mall in your mind?
It could be the Galleria Mall. It could also be another mall that's more in central Dallas.
Okay.
It's the mall that goes unnamed. I think if anyone's been there, they could, identify what it's inspired by. But it really is an amalgamation. Where I feel like growing up, and I don't know about you down in San Antonio. I went to Houston a lot. My uncle lives down there, so the mall, was the first place I'd want to go to. It was like a one-stop shop. You got to like be in an ecosystem. I think that that was really interesting to me, particularly, movies that sort of inspired forbidden fruits like The Craft or Mean Girls, that I sort of watched at the beginning of the writing process and then purposely did not watch again because I was like, I'm gonna let that absorb into my bloodstream and then walk away from it. But I feel like, there's not a school in the movie. And so
Mhm.
Lily Houghton and I were like, if we set it at a mall, we can kind of tap into that nostalgia. We can tap into like when I was growing up, it was like all the senior kids that were cool worked at Abercrombie and Fitch. It's like I think allowing these women to exist in a space that they feel like they have power over, and particularly in the opening of the movie in the food court scene, sort of going, how can we use that to tell you how other people sort of view them, how maybe they view themselves in the environment, so that way we can go off to the races and the movie becomes a little bit more intimate in their own little bubble. So yeah, I think that the mall that it's based on is also really beautiful. It's almost like an art museum. It's like
Mm,
got a lot of natural light, when we were scouting in Toronto where
right.
we saw a lot of like half abandoned malls, a lot of like dinky, kind of creepy, and I was like, well, that doesn't work because if they don't have an actual palace, then they're just even more sort of delusional about, their sort of what they're building,
Right.
So I think we found a mall that I felt was really beautiful in its own way.
I don't think I was ever cool enough to hang out at the mall, and that now as an adult, I I don't see too many kids hanging out at the mall, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's kind of come back around again as a cool place to meet with friends.
Yeah,
Where do you think that is right now?
I think that we're coming out of a phase of extreme isolation,
Mhm.
especially for kids who, were in school remotely
Right.
during the pandemic. So I think that I know I'm craving it, like being in spaces with other people, not shopping online, but going to a place where you can get your Auntie Anne's pretzel, you can shop for a little bit, you can go to a movie at the movie theater in the mall, I think that that was like some of my favorite memories growing up. So I do wonder if like this sort of desire to be in a community, to be with other people will bring people back to these spaces.
Yeah. The coven dynamic to me felt both empowering and dangerous. Were you more interested in celebrating female relationships and bonds or putting them under a microscope kind of?
I think a little bit of both. What really drew me to the play was this was a story about the multitudes in female relationships. And the play, like a movie like Jennifer's Body, which felt like Diablo was the perfect sort of producerial guiding light, alongside Mason Novick, you know, I think she wrote imperfect female characters and she sort of
Mm.
used genre to hyperbolize maybe how extreme female relationships can feel. And I think that, it was really interesting in the phase of pitching this. Before Lily and I wrote it, we were trying to find producers. And so we took out a pitch, a movie version of the play. And we did had some producers go, aren't we supposed to be writing about women loving each other? And I was like, they do love each other. They are all really trying to support each other. I don't think anyone is doing this out of a place of malice. I think that they're doing it in a mall, a capitalist structure that
Mhm.
literally sets them against each other.
Right.
And so I think that definitely putting them under a microscope and what's been so amazing through the process of making the movie and then sharing it with people, particularly doing press like this, uh, you kind of learn what the story is. Whenever I'm
Mm.
making a film, I have questions about myself, my own life, and you know, I think that I really realized how expectations of women can be unhealthy for female relationships. Why are we spending all this money to get makeup or people to do Botox? Who is that for? Is that to uphold an expectation within your female friend group? Is that because you don't want to be judged? You have to feel like you're beautiful and you can't show that you're messy or imperfect. I think that there's a lot of questions around that in the movie.
So I wanted to get your take on this. We're seeing a wave of female-centered, these kind of subversive genre films right now, like Ready or Not 2 just came out. There's a movie called They Will Kill You. There's another movie with ballerinas called Pretty Lethal.
Yep.
Why do you think so many of these stories are arriving at the same time?
I think because what I see is that there are women in power with the power to greenlight these movies and fund these movies that are finally coming into these positions. I think there's a lot of incredible executives and producers out there that are women, women of color, queer people, and finally they have the power to say yes and they have the power to take a chance on people. I think that these types of stories have always been around, but it's very hard to break through because you need people to take chances on you at every step. You need someone to believe in your script and then to help you find financing, and then you need a cast to believe in you. And I think it's a whirlwind of people with greenlighting power having power finally. And I think it's also I personally feel like, again, this goes back to Diablo, like at a young age, seeing Diablo win an Academy Award for Juno, I was like, oh, maybe I can do that.
Mm,
Like Emerald Fennell, Promising Young Woman, Chloe Zhao, there have been a lot of incredible women paving the way, sort of taking
right.
the torch of Lynn Ramsey and Claire Denis, and they're sort of that generation who empowered the next. And so I think that like the more women make movies, the more people like young versions of myself actually believe it's possible.
Mm,
And then it starts happening.
right. Definitely. Well, just a couple more questions, but you mentioned movies like Mean Girls and The Craft, which have been some early reactions from mainstream audiences to describe the film. Are you comfortable with that comparison, or does it miss something essential about your vision? Like, what are we missing when somebody just says those two movies?
Um, Look, I think, I've been asked this question before, and I think that we still need more women making movies because there is still this need to put a movie made by a woman in a box
Right.
to go, oh, it's Mean Girls meets The Craft, so that it makes it more, I don't know, digestible or accessible to understand for other people maybe. And look, those are movies I would be so lucky to have people like reference, like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm honored. But I do think that, I hope we get to a point where it's less about sort of comparing a movie to what's come before and been successful and to be like it pays homage and it's its whole other thing. People when there's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie that comes out, rarely is it, oh, it's exactly like this movie and that movie, or a Tarantino movie is a Tarantino movie. And I hope that, new filmmakers out there kind of transcend the references and people can be like, oh, it's just that director's movie. I think
Mhm.
Ryan Coogler is doing that really, really well. Like his movies feel very much his own thing. So
Well,
again,
you mentioned Zoe Chao too. I mean, she's pretty much in that
yes,
spotlight as well, where you
yes,
can't
just
really.
pinpoint, put her in a
Yeah,
box. So yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely honored by those comparisons, and I hope that people, when they see Fruits, they see that, there's some darker themes and some complexities at hand that, I think the movie dips into a little bit more of a drama or, I don't know, than Mean Girls, which is pretty much a straight comedy.
yeah, yeah. Are you a parent? Just out of curiosity.
Done my mom?
Yeah.
No,
Okay. I
not
was just
yet.
wondering, and I know these characters in the movie, they're not high school age, right? They're a little bit older than that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Hmm.
just, I mean, I think it kind of ties into, I have a 14-year-old daughter who will be going to high school next year. And so I'm already
Wow.
thinking about the kinds of social dynamics she might face, especially like those unhealthy or shifting friendships that can come with that age. So I thought your film really tapped into those tensions. So what do you think stories like Forbidden Fruits can say about that experience? And is there anything you hope like young women or even parents can take away from watching?
Yeah, I love that you asked about that because I think that, I'm at the age where even though I don't have kids, I'm thinking about it, and I have a lot of friends with children. Being from Texas, I have a lot of friends that had kids 10 years ago. Um, I think that what I've realized through the process of making the movie is telling young women in particular very early on, you can be an individual. You can have things that you like that your friends don't like. You can have friends outside of that friend group. You can be an individual and you can also belong. I think that in the movie, the girls have these like confessionals that they do alone to themselves or to Marilyn. And I like to think that if they confess to each other, the chaos of the movie would never happen,
Mhm.
And it through the process of making this and then talking about the film, it's made again me reflect on certain things maybe I hide from my girlfriends because it's not pretty or it's not pretty, I mean like not like visually pretty, but like it's not
Right.
quote unquote attractive. Cherry says, I have enough unattractive qualities. And I think it's like people don't understand really like how much women do that to themselves. I think it's society's expectation of them. But I think that I would hope young women see the movie and see that each character is actually incredible in their individuality, and they all actually fit together in a kind of cool way. The chemistry of them all works, and particularly with the actresses, and what they've brought to the table that, yeah, I think that you can belong and also be yourself. think it takes you time to learn that. And I was much, I think I was in my 20s before I really learned that. So I hope young women see the movie and take something positive from it, even though it descends into madness.
Definitely. I was in my late 30s when I found out that love really isn't about finding someone to build a piece of IKEA furniture with, like they talk about it.
Yeah,
I do not want to
yeah.
do that again, ever again. I've told my wife many times before, we're not building IKEA furniture together anymore. We've done that already.
I mean, it's so true. The think that like, oh, I want, to me that line really, to circle back to Texas, like I feel for Fig and I relate a lot to her because I
Mhm.
do feel like, oh, I was growing up going, I know I want to go make movies. I knew that from a young age, but and my career was like very important to me, but I was like, oh, but like I also want to build a life with someone, and I think you can particularly Fig, and I relate to it as existing in the push and pull of that. The building the IKEA couch is the like, am I giving up my coven and my femininity to like be domestic, And it's like again, like you can have it all. It's not easy, but you can have it all. And yeah, also you don't have to honestly, the best advice is like hire someone to build the IKEA couch. Don't
Exactly.
do it together because it will end up
Well,
badly.
not only that, it takes like 10 hours to do. I mean, who
Yep.
has 10 hours?
You could go on a date. You could spend 10 hours walking wistfully through the park at sunset, as Cherry
Yes,
likes.
there you go.
Mhm.
Hey, Meredith, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank
Again,
you.
congratulations on Forbidden Fruits, and we can't wait to tell more people about it.
Thank you, Kiko. Amazing questions. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.